Hello everybody, welcome back to another YouTube tutorial on Go. Today I'd like to look at what appears like it's coming in version 1.6 of Go that should be out in a little bit. As of the time that I'm recording this, the release notes for the alpha version of 1.6 just got released, and there's some exciting things that look like we have in store for us. So to start out, I'm going to open up a browser here. Go to tip.golang.org, doc, Go 1.6. So as you can see, there are some changes in the internal structure of Go that happens pretty often. They've got performance improvements and garbage collection improvements, which are really cool, but they're very hard to demonstrate in a video cast like this. So we're not going to talk about those. HTTP 2 is coming into the core library. I do want to talk about that, but that's not going to be what I'm going to talk about in this video. Today I'd like to focus down here on some changes to the template library. Now these changes were very exciting to me when I first saw them, and that's why I wanted to make this video before I even talked about HTTP 2, which I guess I should be excited about, but I'm kind of a front-end guy, so templating is something that gets me going. Anyway, two things I want to talk about today. The first thing that they're talking about is automatic whitespace removal. That'll be a pretty minor thing I want to talk about, but that could be kind of convenient. And the second thing is this block syntax here. And not just this block action that's going to be added to the template library, but also the ability to redefine templates, which is something that we didn't have prior to the 1.6 release. So, without further ado, let's get into the editor and start playing around with some stuff. So I've got here, I'm going to start with a simple application here. It's a web application, but it serves as a static file. That's the only thing that it does. And this static file doesn't have much to it. I'm loading Bootstrap's style sheet, I'm loading jQuery, and I'm loading the Bootstrap JavaScript plugin as well. I'm not going to do anything with those, but I just want to show you some of the things that we can do with this new templating syntax. So I'm going to be using those as kind of demonstration libraries. The content's pretty simple. It just says this is the index page. As you might imagine, we're going to be adding another page and altering that content as we go along. So if I spin this up, remembering to go build, because this is Windows and that gives me one break through the firewall rule instead of having to break every time, and get that running, then I can open up my browser again, navigate to localhost 3000, and there's our page. If I refresh, check the network tab, I see that there's Bootstrap CSS, jQuery, and the Bootstrap JavaScript libraries are loaded in. So, not a big deal there. We'll see that throughout the rest of the screencast. I just want to show some things behind the scenes that are going on as we work with this and templatize it. So the first thing that I want to do, after I close this down, is I want to switch this over to a template format. So if I did this in the old world, what I would want to do, let me start by creating a templates folder. And inside of that, I'm going to create a folder called blocks that's going to help me out later. So the goal here is I want to break out the parts of this HTML file that I might want to inject some additional functionality into. So, for example, I've got the style sheet. Presumably Bootstrap is going to be used throughout the application. That means the Bootstrap library is as well, and probably jQuery is as well. So I want every page to load those in, but there may be certain pages that require different style sheets or different JavaScript files. Additionally, certainly not everything is going to have the same body content. So what I'd like to be able to do is inject custom style sheets here, inject custom scripts here, and in this where this H1 is, inject a custom body. Okay, so let's look at how we would do this in Go 1.5 and before. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file that I'm going to call layout.html. And inside of that, I'm going to copy all of this as a good starting point. Now the title, I might want to use some kind of injection syntax to inject into the template a title that every page that's consuming this template is going to be able to use. I also want to add the ability to add custom style sheets. So the way I would do that in the old world is I would say template, and I'm going to call in a template. And for the body, I'm going to say I need the body template. And down below, after the scripts, I'm going to import the scripts. Okay, so no problem. The challenge here, of course, is that every place that we have a template, we're going to have to identify that template. We're going to have to pull that in. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge. The way we're going to do that is we're going to start with our initial block. That's going to be index.html again, but that's going to be in this blocks folder. So for each one of those templates that are in the layout, I need to define the template. So I'm going to define that body, and I cut this out earlier so to make that a little easier. Now I don't have any custom scripts or styles to add to this index page, but because the templates are there, I have to have something defined. So I'm going to have to define the styles and the scripts, even though those are going to be empty. Like that. Okay, so now that I've done that, I have to make some modifications to the main function. As you can imagine, this is a little bit simpler than I'm going to be working with if I'm going to use templates. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to get a way to actually create these templates. And I have to admit, this may not be the simplest way for Go 1.5, but this is going to set me up to do what I want to do going forward here. Okay, so I'm going to create a function called Parse Templates that's going to return a map of string and templates. So those templates are going to be HTML templates, because this is a web application. And the map, the key to the map is going to be with the block. So the first key is going to be index.html, and the goal is it's going to load in the layout, and it's going to parse in the index.html and parse that into the layout so that I get the index.html is going to overlay the layout template. So let me just show you what I'm talking about by coding this up. The first thing I like to do in functions like this, I know that the jury's out on the best way to do this, but I like to start by creating the result at the beginning of the function and returning the result at the end of the function. There's definitely a school of thought that says return as soon as you can from the function. I like, in general, to run through the entire course of the function. I think it makes it easier to maintain since you have a known entry point and exit point. But I don't want to start any religious wars on this. This is just the style that seems to work for me pretty well. The next thing I need to do is I'm going to parse the layout by using the Parse Files method from the HTML template package. And I'm going to be running this from the root of the project. So the working directory starts out as right up here. So I'm going to go templates and index.html. Okay, so that should get that. Next thing I need to do is I need to bring in the OS package, and while I'm here, I'll go ahead and bring in the IOUtil package as well. I think I'm going to need that. Okay, so I'm going to get the directory that contains the blocks by using the open function from the OS package and open the blocks directory. I'm going to defer closing that to make sure I manage my resources well. Next thing, I'm going to grab the file info objects from that directory using the readdir method. Passing in -1 gives me all of the results back. And then I'm going to range over those. Okay, so what I want to do is for each one of the objects that are found in here, so that there's only going to be one the first time, that's going to be index.html. The first thing I need to do is I want to make sure that it is not a directory, just in case as this thing gets maintained, a subdirectory gets added. If it is a directory, I'm just going to bypass it because I'm looking for files, not directories. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open that file. I guess I should probably break that base path out to a variable, but this will work for now. And then after I have that file open, I'm going to use the IOUtil package to read all of its contents. Of course, I'm ignoring errors for this demonstration. You wouldn't want to ignore errors in your production applications. Okay, and I'm done with that file, so I'm going to close it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, I don't know if there's a better way to do this. This is what I found. So if you know a better way, please let me know. I'm going to clone the layout template. And then in that template, I am going to parse the content of the block that I just loaded. Okay, and then I will append the result or add to the result. The key will be the name of the file and the value will be the template. Okay, so see if that worked. Everything appears happy. That's good. Now that I have that, oops, something isn't happy. Oh, well, that's kind of silly. Oh, I guess I need to cast this back to a string because when it pulls in the contents from a file, it pulls it in as a byte slice. Okay, there we go. I think that that's working. So I need to grab that map up here at the beginning of the main function. And now I should be able to retrieve that map back out here by getting the templates of index.html. Again, we're keying off of this name up here. And I'm going to execute, pass to the writer. And if you remember, in the template, I have this title property here. So I'm going to have to inject that. I'm going to use an anonymous struct for that. Just pass in index. Make sure everything is closed off properly. Okay, so that's how we're going to get our basic templates in here. So let me fire this back up. And if I am very, very lucky, everything should still be here. Okay, very good. So let me just make sure that I can change this. So I should be able to change the file here. Hello, go. Okay, now I need to fire this back up to reload the templates because I don't have any dynamic template loading logic. If I hit F5, there we go, hello, go. Awesome. So we are now pulling in templates. What we don't need to do in Go 1.6, so in Go 1.5, we had to do all this stuff. In Go 1.6, we can define basic templates and then come in and redefine them later. So what we can do in that world is we can actually define the template here. So we'll define styles. We don't have to have anything in here. And we'll do the same thing for scripts. And that lets us get rid of those lines out of here. Now let's just make sure that this works. Of course, I am running. Maybe I should have shown you that. I am running Go 1.6 here. So let's go ahead and run. Pull up the browser. And everything still works. So that's good. And I can also, let's go ahead and grab something more or less random. It doesn't really matter what I have here. If I define the scripts and drop that in, now we should get this script tag in here twice. It's not really good web development, but it's good to demonstrate what's going on. Okay, pull up the admin tool so we can see what the network traffic, or see the elements rather, and we see, there we go, we've got jQuery in here once, jQuery in here twice, because the template is injecting it through the layout, and we're also injecting it through this redefined template here. So that's one addition to Go 1.6. You wouldn't be able to do that in Go 1.5. Once a template is defined, the template is defined and you're done. So that's pretty cool. But we still have a little bit of messiness here. Before we clean that up, let's go ahead and use this template to at least show that our original purpose. So maybe our original purpose was to add an about. So now we can actually reuse this. We're going to reuse our layout. We add a new block. We're going to call that about HTML. We can copy this into the about template and say this is the about page. Okay, so what's going to happen here is now we're going to load the about template. The Parse Templates method is going to find that file in the blocks directory as it's looping through here. It's going to parse that. It's going to add that to our template map that's coming back. So we should have two templates defined, one that's index, one that's about, and we should be able to get independent functionality using the same basic layout, which is a primary use case of templates and one that is a whole lot easier with this new functionality. So our index still works, no big surprise, we didn't change anything there, and now when we go to about, we've got our about page. Okay, both of them, as you might imagine, are loading the JavaScript libraries we have, and we have the Bootstrap library as well. And as you might imagine as well, we've got index here in the title, and we've got about here in this title. Okay, good. Everything's looking very good. The last thing that I want to show is something called the block syntax. So this is working for us. We can now redefine the template, so we can define an empty template up here or a default implementation of a template up here, and that's going to work just fine. The problem is this is a little bit verbose, so we require 2 lines in order to make this work, so it's not really the most efficient way that we could be doing things. So with 1.6 they introduce another concept that's called a block. So if I replace both of those lines with a block, inject a context in there, so I need a dot or a dot title or a dot something in order to provide the current scope, and then I do not have to provide a default implementation, and I can do the same thing here, and I guess maybe it's simpler just to repurpose this define tag. And now in one line, I've got a much simpler implementation for styles and scripts. Now I don't want to do that for the template body because I always want to have some body present in whoever's going to be using this layout. That's kind of the point. But this way, a consumer of this template that wants to inject custom styles can. If you don't want to inject custom styles, then you don't. And this default empty block will be used to define an empty template for you. So really this is just syntax sugar for a define action and a template action, but let's just verify that this is going to work as well. So fire the application back up, rebuilding everything, go back to the browser. The about page still works. The index page still works. Let's do a hard refresh just to be very, very sure, and everything looks like it's working just fine. So I think that that's pretty impressive. I hope that you do too. I've always struggled as I've been working with Go. I've always struggled with how am I going to make this thing do what I needed to do. Well, the addition of redefinable templates and block actions makes it much easier to implement composition patterns with templates so that you can have that base layout template that defines the structure for most of your pages, and then you compose in and layer on top the templates that provide the individual functionality that every page requires. So I think that that's a very, very powerful addition to Go. I'm glad that it's coming. I can't wait for 1.6 to come out. The last thing I want to show you before I head out here is this idea of this Whitespace trimming. I know that was listed first in the notes, but I needed the demo to actually be working with templates before I could show it to you. So the demo that they show is if you have Whitespace in the tags. So if I did something like this, I think this is basically what they have in the release notes, which is a pattern that you might get into in order to keep your code clean, because if this doesn't just say 23 and 35, you might actually have a significant amount of code here and you want to keep that on its own line for maintainability. So if you did this and you fired up your app, it doesn't matter which page I'm on because this is in the layout, then I get, which you might expect, 23 and 35, but the source code has all this white space in it. So that's what they're trying to fix with this syntax. So what you do in Go 1.6 is you add a minus sign here, and a minus sign here, and I might need a minus sign here. Now let's see what this does first. Okay, that's running. Refresh. And now you see the white space has been trimmed here and here. So there's no white space after the 35. There's no white space before this 23 from the template. If I come back again, there is white space here. You see that? So if I add a minus here, let's see if we can get rid of all of it. Personal challenge. Okay, reset this again. Come back to the page, refresh. So now we've actually gotten rid of the white space here, so you have to be careful. Make sure you mean to use that. Make sure you mean to do that. And now we got 23 minus 35. 23 is less than 35 with no white space, even though the markup has white space in it. Okay, that could be an important feature. I just want to make you aware of that. Actually, I think, as I look at it, this white space is actually coming from the template itself. So there's nothing, or it's coming from the index block, or which one are we on? Yeah, it's coming from the index block. So there's nothing we can do here. This isn't actually going to do anything because that's going to be injected by the index block over here. So we'd have to add a minus sign. So anyway, I want to show you that too. So if you add a minus sign before, it's going to trim white space before. If you add a minus sign after, it's going to trim white space after. If you do need that space to remain, then you need to remember these guys, because it is going to go away. So if I do that, I get my white space back in between the numbers in the logical operator here. Okay, so well, that's all I have for that. Next time I'm going to be trying to tee up a video talking about HTTP2. From what I'm seeing, it actually looks like that's not going to be, for most users, that's not going to look like a whole bunch of anything because they're going to do it transparently in the background. But there does promise to be some ways to turn that on, turn that off. I want to show you maybe a little bit about the advantages that you'll get with that. As always, please leave comments down below. And if you have any questions or want to check out my courses on Pluralsight, there's information down below about all the Go courses on Pluralsight, because I just don't want you to look at mine. There's a lot of good material out there. And as always, once again, if you would like a 30-day free trial to Pluralsight, there's a lot more stuff than just what I talk about out there. There's a lot of JavaScript stuff, database stuff as well. Hit me up, direct message me on Twitter, and I can hook you up with a 30-day trial. Okay, well, that's all I have for now, so I will talk to you later. Take care of yourselves. Bye.